For 11 years, Naomi Holloway walked past the same bedroom door every single morning. And every single morning, she opened it just an inch. Not because she expected to see him inside, but because closing it completely would mean admitting that her son was never coming home. 11 years. 4,015 mornings. Each one beginning with the same quiet ritual. The crack of the door, the smell of a room frozen in time, and a whispered prayer that today, God, please, let today be the day. She didn't know it yet, but 342 miles away, in a quiet suburb of Atlanta, a 16-year-old boy named Elijah was sitting in a school library, flipping through a dusty binder of missing children. A class assignment he thought would take 5 minutes. He was wrong, because on page 47, under a header that read, "Still missing after 10 years or more," Elijah Price was about to see something that would collapse the entire architecture of the life his father had built for him. He was about to see his own face. And next to it, the face of a woman he had been drawing in his sketchbook, in secret, every single night, for as long as he could remember. A woman his father swore had died in a car accident when he was 5 years old. This is the story of a mother who refused to stop looking, a boy who refused to stop remembering, and a father whose 11-year lie was about to burn to the ground in the middle of a public library on a Tuesday afternoon. Before we begin, if stories like this move you, please subscribe. Your subscription is what allows these real, powerful stories to keep reaching people who need to hear them. Now, let's go back to where it all started. Naomi Holloway lived on the second floor of a narrow brick row house in West Philadelphia, on a block where the maple trees had grown taller than the streetlights, and the neighbors still waved when they passed each other on the sidewalk. She was 38 years old now. Her hair, once thick and jet black, had begun to show soft streaks of gray at the temples, streaks she refused to dye, because gray hair meant time was passing, and time passing meant she was one day closer to finding him. Every morning began the same way. At 5:47 a.m., before her alarm even had the chance to ring, her eyes would open. She would lie in the dark and listen, to the ticking of the radiator, to the low hum of the city waking up outside, to the silence in the room across the hall. And she would say his name, Elijah, just once, softly, like a candle being lit. Then she would get up, wrap herself in the same worn gray cardigan she had been wearing for years, and cross the hallway to the door she never fully closed. The room behind it was small, a twin bed with a blue quilt she had washed exactly 44 times over the years to keep it from smelling stale. A shelf of children's books, Where the Wild Things Are, The Snowy Day, Corduroy, arranged in the same order Elijah had arranged them on the night before he disappeared. A stuffed elephant named Peanut resting on the pillow, its ear rubbed thin from the small hands of a 5-year-old boy. And on the nightstand, a photograph. The photograph. It had been taken on March 14th, 2015, 3 days before he was taken. Elijah in a red hoodie, front tooth missing, holding a chocolate ice cream cone that was dripping down his wrist. His smile was so wide it seemed to reach out of the frame. Naomi picked it up, the way she did every morning, and pressed it briefly to her chest. "I'm still looking, baby," she whispered. "Mama is still looking." Then she placed it back down, straightened the quilt, and walked out, leaving the door open just an inch. Never fully closed. Never. Downstairs in the kitchen, she made coffee. Strong, black, the way her mother used to make it back in South Carolina. She poured it into a chipped white mug that said, "World's Best Mom," in faded pink letters. A Mother's Day gift Elijah had made for her in kindergarten, just weeks before he was taken. She had refused to throw it out even when the handle cracked. She had glued it back together herself 3 times. Naomi worked the night shift at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in the pediatric oncology ward. 12-hour shifts, 4 nights a week. It was the hardest job in the building, and everyone knew it, and no one could understand why a woman who had already lost her child would choose to spend her nights holding other people's dying children. But Naomi understood. Because every child she held, every fevered forehead she cooled, every small hand she squeezed, she held for him. She whispered to those children the way she had once whispered to Elijah. She sang to them the songs she used to sing to him. And when a mother collapsed in the hallway after receiving the worst news of her life, Naomi was the one who caught her. Because Naomi already knew what that grief tasted like. Her days, when she wasn't sleeping, belonged to the search. She had a corkboard in her living room that took up an entire wall. Photographs, newspaper clippings, phone numbers of investigators, notes from psychics she didn't believe in but called anyway. Age progression images of Elijah at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, released by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children every couple of years. 16. He would be 16 now. She stared at the most recent age progression image for a long moment. A young man's face, longer than she remembered, sharper jaw, his father's cheekbones, but her eyes, her exact eyes, wide, dark, watchful. She didn't know if the picture was accurate. She didn't know if he was tall or short. She didn't know if his voice had changed yet, if he liked basketball or football, if he still drew the way he used to draw at 4, obsessively, endlessly, filling every scrap of paper in the house. She didn't know if he was alive, but she believed. God, she believed. At 7:30 a.m., there was a soft knock at her door. Naomi didn't need to look through the peephole. She knew that knock the way she knew her own heartbeat. "Come in, Miss Lorraine." Miss Lorraine Jackson was 72 years old, a retired social worker who had lived in the row house next door for 41 years. She was a small woman, no more than 5 feet tall, with a halo of soft white hair and eyes that had seen every kind of pain a human being could carry. She had knocked on Naomi's door every single morning for 11 years. "Morning, baby." Miss Lorraine came in holding 2 brown paper bags. "Made you some grits and eggs. And I brought that file I told you about, the one from the case in Charlotte. Some parallels I want you to see." Naomi smiled, a tired, small smile, but a real one. "You're the only reason I eat, Miss Lorraine." "Well, somebody's got to keep you standing." They sat at the kitchen table. Miss Lorraine spread the file across the surface, a case from 2013, a mother in Charlotte whose ex-husband had taken her son to Georgia. It had taken 9 years to find him. 9 years, Miss Lorraine said, tapping the folder. And they did find him. Baby, you hear me? They found him. Naomi nodded. Her eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. She had cried an ocean over the years, and she had learned that tears did not bring children home. Only work did. Only faith. Only refusal. "I've been thinking about something," Miss Lorraine said, quieter now. "You ever notice how, In almost every one of these cases, the child gets found because of one small thing: a poster, a photo, a neighbor, a teacher, something the kidnapper never thought about. Naomi looked up. "What are you saying?" Miss Lorraine took her hand. "I'm saying, Naomi Holloway, somewhere out there, that boy is walking around. And one day, one ordinary day, something small is going to happen. And the wall his daddy built is going to crack. And when it does, our God, He's going to send that child home." Naomi closed her eyes. She wanted to believe her. She did believe her. She just didn't know that 342 miles away, that ordinary day was about to arrive. Elijah Price woke up at exactly 6:15 a.m., the way he did every morning, in a bedroom that looked like it had been designed by a magazine. The walls were a soft, careful gray. The bedspread was clean and geometric. The bookshelf held only the books his father approved of: biographies of successful men, textbooks, and a set of leather-bound classics that had never been opened. The desk was neat. The floor was clear. There was a framed motivational quote above the bed that read, "Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment." Everything in the room was correct. Everything in the room was wrong. Elijah couldn't have told you how he knew that. He had lived in this house for as long as he could remember. He knew every creak of the stairs, every angle of the sunlight through the blinds, every rule his father had ever laid down. This was his life. This was home. And yet, every morning, for as long as he could remember, he woke with the same faint ache in his chest, a dull, quiet homesickness for a place he could not name. He sat up slowly, rubbed his face with both hands, reached under the mattress. He pulled out the sketchbook. It was a thick, black, hardcover moleskin, the kind his art teacher, Ms. Reyna, had given him last year as a birthday gift. His father did not know it existed. His father did not approve of art hobbies. His father believed art was a distraction from the real world of engineering, business, and results. Elijah opened it. Page after page of the same face. A woman. Sometimes in profile. Sometimes in three-quarter view. Sometimes just her eyes. Sometimes her whole face smiling. She had wide, dark, watchful eyes. Full lips. A small mole just beneath her left ear. Warm brown skin. Hair pulled back in a soft, low bun. He had never met her. He had never seen a photograph of her. His father had told him, from the time he was 5 years old, that his mother had died in a car accident on Interstate 76 in Philadelphia on March 17, 2015, and that there were no photographs left because everything had been lost in the fire. And yet, Elijah could draw this woman from memory. He had drawn her hundreds of times for 11 years. He flipped to a blank page and, without thinking, began to sketch her again. The same eyes, the same mouth, the same tilt of the head. Somewhere at the back of his mind, a soft melody was playing. A lullaby, wordless, gentle. He did not know where he had heard it. He did not know its name. But it lived inside him, and it surfaced every morning at exactly this moment, like a signal from a country he had once lived in and could no longer find on any map. "Elijah!" His father's voice from downstairs. Firm, clean. Never raised, but always precise. Breakfast in 8 minutes. Yes, sir. Elijah shut the sketchbook, slid it back under the mattress, made the bed with military corners, the way his father had taught him. Dressed, combed his hair, checked himself in the mirror. The mirror showed a tall, lean 16-year-old boy with warm brown skin, high cheekbones, and wide, dark, watchful eyes. Her eyes. Not that he knew it yet. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled like coffee and bacon. Karen, his stepmother, was scrambling eggs at the stove. She was a soft-voiced woman in her 40s, kind, patient, with the tired eyes of someone who had learned a long time ago that this house did not run on love. It ran on Darnell Price's rules. "Morning, sweetheart," she said, without turning. "Morning, Karen." Darnell Price sat at the head of the table. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, handsome in a severe, controlled way. 46 years old, a vice president at a mid-sized logistics firm. Impeccably dressed, even at breakfast, he wore a pressed white shirt with the top button open and a silver watch on his left wrist. His voice was warm. His smile was warm. Everything about him was warm. Everything except his eyes. His eyes were engineers. They measured, they calculated. They noticed when the fork was in the wrong hand, when the chair was 3 inches too far from the table, when his son's mood had shifted by even the smallest degree. "Sit down, son." Elijah sat down. Darnell poured him orange juice, slid the plate of eggs across the table. "How did you sleep?" "Fine, sir." "Any dreams?" Elijah paused for just a fraction of a second. There had been a dream. A woman singing, her hands on his face, warm light behind her. But he had learned, over 11 years, that this was not the kind of information his father wanted to hear. "No, sir." Darnell smiled. "Good. Dreams are for people who don't do enough during the day." "Yes, sir." They ate. Darnell asked about his classes, asked about the debate team, asked about the calculus quiz on Friday. And Elijah answered each question the way he had been trained to answer. Clearly, briefly, without unnecessary emotion. He had, over the years, become an expert at managing his own face. He knew how to keep his eyes still. He knew how to keep his voice level. He knew how to keep the ache in his chest hidden behind a small, polite smile. 11 years in a house where the atmosphere was set by one person had taught him to manage his face the way a pilot manages instruments. But then Karen, kind, tired Karen, did something unusual. She turned from the stove, wiped her hands on the dish towel, and said, "Oh, honey, before I forget, I put a fresh pack of pencils in your backpack. Ms. Reyna sent an email saying your class is going to the public library today for a research project." Elijah's fork paused. Something inside him, something so quiet he almost didn't notice it, took a small, sharp breath. He did not know why. He did not know that the wall his father had spent 11 years building was about to meet the one thing it had never been designed to withstand. He said, "Yes, ma'am, thank you," and he went to school. To understand how a 5-year-old boy became a 16-year-old stranger, you have to go back. You have to go back to 2014, before the abduction, when Nadine Holloway was 27 years old, working as a pediatric nurse at Temple University Hospital in Philadelphia, and married for 4 difficult years to a man named Darnell Price. They had met in college. Darnell had been charming then, brilliant, ambitious, funny in a dry, careful way. He came from a wealthy family in Atlanta. His father was an engineer. His mother was a school principal. He had been raised on discipline, on excellence, on the idea that a black man in America could only survive by being twice as good and never out of control. At first, Naomi had loved that about him. She had grown up poor in Charleston. Her own father had left when she was 6. Her mother had raised her on faith, food stamps, and Sunday hymns. Darnell, with his steady voice, his organized life, his refusal to ever raise his voice in anger, had seemed like safety. But safety and control, she would later learn, are not the same thing. The first sign came 6 months into the marriage. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet reorganization of her life. Darnell reorganized her kitchen without asking. He picked out the paint colors for their apartment. He suggested, gently, always gently, that she should stop talking so often to her college roommate, who was a bad influence. He suggested she should not wear that particular dress because it was not the kind of thing a wife should wear in public. He suggested she should ask him before making any purchase over $50, just so they could budget together as a team. Suggestions, never demands. But there were so many of them, and each one was so reasonable sounding that by the time Naomi realized her life had shrunk to fit inside a box her husband had drawn, she was already inside the box. Then Elijah was born. March 14th, 2010. And for a moment, everything was beautiful. Naomi had never loved anything the way she loved that baby. His tiny hands, the way he curled into her chest, the soft, warm weight of him at 3 a.m., when the whole world was sleeping and she was the only person he needed. She sang to him constantly, a lullaby she had made up herself, a simple, wordless melody with a little rise at the end. She sang it in the shower. She sang it in the car. She sang it when he cried. She sang it when he slept. She did not know it, but she was recording that melody into a place inside him that no man could ever burn down. But as Elijah grew, something in Darnell began to shift. He did not like that Naomi picked Elijah up every time he cried. He did not like that Naomi laughed too loudly with her son. He did not like that Elijah, at 4 years old, ran to her, not him, when he was scared. "You are making him weak," Darnell said one night, quietly at the dinner table. Naomi looked up. "He's 4, Darnell. He is a boy, and he needs a father, not a smothering mother." The word smothering landed like a small, sharp knife. Over the next year, the suggestions became more frequent. Naomi should not coddle the boy. Naomi should not let him draw so much. It makes him soft. Naomi should not sing to him at bedtime. He's too old for that now. Naomi should let Darnell handle Elijah's discipline, his schedule, his rules. By the time Elijah was 5, Naomi was walking on eggshells in her own home. And then came the divorce filing. It was Naomi who filed. She had, at last, saved enough money, hidden in an account Miss Lorraine helped her open, to hire an attorney. She had, at last, worked up the courage to say the words out loud. "I want out." Darnell reacted with the calm, chilling precision that would later define everything. He did not shout. He did not beg. He did not throw anything. He simply smiled, a small, thin smile, and said, "All right, if that's what you want." Within 72 hours, he had filed a countersuit for full custody of Elijah. Within a week, he had produced documentation, carefully, quietly assembled over months, that painted Naomi as unstable. Anonymous complaints to Child Protective Services, a therapist's note taken out of context, a neighbor's statement, a neighbor Darnell had once helped fix a car, describing Naomi as emotional and erratic. Financial records showing that Naomi had been the one making the impulsive purchases. Never mind that the purchases were groceries and children's clothes. The numbers on paper told a different story. Naomi's attorney, a young, overworked woman named Rachel, was outmatched. Darnell had money. Darnell had time. Darnell had a whole architecture of quiet documentation, built while Naomi was busy raising a son. The judge, an aging man near retirement, took one look at the paperwork and granted Darnell temporary primary custody, pending a full evaluation. Weekend visitation for Naomi. Every other weekend. Naomi walked out of the courtroom with her legs shaking so badly she had to sit down on the courthouse steps. She had lost. She had lost her boy, for 2 weeks at a time. She did not yet understand that she had actually lost him for 11 years. Because 2 weekends later, on March 17, 2015, Naomi drove to Darnell's apartment to pick up Elijah for their scheduled visit. The apartment was empty. Not just empty of Elijah, empty of everything. Furniture gone, clothes gone, no forwarding address, no note, nothing. Naomi stood in the middle of the empty living room, and she made a sound she did not recognize. A low, animal sound from somewhere deeper than language. Her son was gone. She called the police. The police told her that because Darnell had temporary primary custody, and because there was no evidence of immediate danger, this was, technically, a civil custody matter, not a criminal case. She called the FBI. The FBI told her the same thing. She called an attorney. The attorney told her it would take months to convert the case into a criminal one, and even then, if Darnell had crossed state lines, it would become a federal jurisdictional nightmare. Meanwhile, 3 states away, Darnell Price was already unpacking boxes in a rental house in a quiet suburb of Atlanta, sitting on the couch with a confused 5-year-old boy, telling him, gently, warmly, in that terrible, calm voice, "Son, I have to tell you something very sad. Mommy was in a car accident. She's with the angels now. It's just going to be you and me from now on. But I promise, Daddy will take care of you forever." And the 5-year-old boy, because he was 5, and because he trusted his father, and because he had no other explanation for why his mother was suddenly not there, believed him. The lie had begun. Darnell Price was not, by any ordinary measure, an evil man. He would have been offended by that word. He did not think of himself as a kidnapper. He thought of himself as a rescuer. In his own mind, he had saved his son from a woman who, in his version of events, was too emotional, too fragile, too unpredictable to raise a boy properly. He had done what any good father would do. He had made a hard decision, and he had accepted the cost, because that was what men did. That was the story he told himself. It was also the story he built, brick by brick, around Elijah for 11 years. He built it carefully. He built it patiently. He built it the way an engineer builds a bridge, with tolerances, with contingencies, with backup systems. The first pillar was the story itself. Elijah's mother had died in a car accident on I-76 on March 17, 2015. It was a rainy night. She had been driving home from work. A truck had jackknifed. There had been a fire. Everything had been lost, including any photographs. Darnell repeated this story with such consistency, such gentle sadness, that even he began, on some days, to feel the grief of it. He told Elijah he was sorry there were no pictures. He told Elijah that Mommy had loved him very, very much. He told Elijah that on the anniversary of her death every year, They would visit her grave together. A small headstone in a cemetery 2 counties away, in a plot Darnell had purchased with cash and registered under a fabricated name. Every March 14th, Elijah's birthday, and also, coincidentally, the day before the fabricated anniversary, they would drive to that cemetery. Darnell would bring flowers. He would put his arm around his son. He would say, "Your mother would be so proud of the man you're becoming." Elijah would stare at the headstone. The name on it was Naomi's, misspelled slightly, Naomi Price, and it gave him a strange, uneasy feeling every time he read it. But he could not name why. The second pillar was information control. The internet was Darnell's greatest enemy, and he treated it like one. Elijah was not allowed on social media. Not because Darnell said so out loud. Darnell was too smart to make a rule that dramatic. But because he had, over the years, quietly convinced Elijah that social media was for shallow people and distracted minds. Elijah's phone was a basic model. No apps, no browser, just calls, texts, and a calculator. The family computer was in Darnell's office. Every website Elijah visited was logged. Every search was filtered. The word Naomi never appeared on that computer. The words missing and Philadelphia and 2015 never appeared together in any search. Elijah did not know he was being watched. He simply assumed, the way children of controlling parents always assume, that these were the normal boundaries of a normal life. The third pillar was Karen. Darnell had married Karen when Elijah was 7, 2 years after the abduction. Karen was a kind, uncomplicated woman who worked as a dental hygienist and had no children of her own. Darnell had chosen her carefully. She was warm enough to give the household the appearance of a family. She was passive enough to never ask difficult questions. Karen did not know the truth. She had been told, when Darnell first courted her, the same story he told everyone, that his first wife had died tragically in a car accident, and that he had moved to Atlanta to give his son a fresh start. Karen loved Elijah in her own quiet, tired way. She packed his lunches. She washed his clothes. She kissed him on the forehead at bedtime, even when he was 15 and pretended to hate it. She was, in her own way, another wall in the house. A soft one, but a wall nonetheless. The fourth pillar was atmosphere. This was, perhaps, the most sophisticated part of Darnell's design. He understood that children do not need to be told things to believe them. Children absorb things, from tone, from silence, from the way adults' faces change when certain topics come up. Darnell curated the atmosphere of the house the way a museum curates its lighting. When Elijah, at 6 years old, had once asked to see a picture of his mother, Darnell's face had, just for a fraction of a second, flickered. Not with anger, with pain. Beautiful, believable pain. "I don't have any, son. I wish I did. I'm so sorry." Elijah had never asked again. When Elijah, at 8 years old, had once asked why they never visited Mommy's family, Darnell had explained, sadly, that Mommy's family had been difficult people and that they had cut off contact after her death. This, too, was delivered with such quiet grief that Elijah had felt guilty for even asking. By the age of 10, Elijah had learned, without ever being told, that certain topics were off limits. Not because they were forbidden, but because they hurt his father. And Elijah loved his father. The fifth pillar, and this one was the crack in the design that Darnell never saw, was the sketchbook. Darnell had allowed Elijah to draw because drawing was harmless. He had underestimated it. He did not understand that a 5-year-old child does not lose memory the way an adult does. A 5-year-old child stores memory in the body, in the muscles, in the hands, in the ears. A song heard 1,000 times before the age of 5 does not vanish. It becomes a rhythm in the blood. Elijah could not consciously remember his mother, but his hands could. Every night, when he sketched a face he had never seen, Elijah was, without knowing it, reaching back into a country his father had spent 11 years telling him did not exist. And every night, without knowing it, Elijah was drawing a treasure map. He just needed to see the X. Tuesday, October 14th. Elijah's school, Ridgemont High, a well-funded suburban school just north of Atlanta, sent his entire junior American Studies class on a field trip to the county public library. The assignment was straightforward. Each student had to select a topic of American social concern, conduct research using both digital and print sources, and prepare a 5-minute presentation for the following week. The bus left the school at 9:45 a.m. Elijah sat by the window, sketchbook on his lap, and watched the world slide past. The neat lawns, the strip malls, the church signs with their carefully polite messages of hope. He did not feel excited. He did not feel bored. He felt, the way he always felt, a low, quiet static in his chest, like a radio tuned between 2 stations. Ms. Reyna, his American Studies teacher, was a warm, no-nonsense woman in her 50s who wore silver hoops and had a laugh that filled entire hallways. She had noticed Elijah from his first week in her class. She had noticed the way he sat perfectly still, the way his handwriting was too neat, the way he never, not once, spoke about his family without pausing first, as though checking the words for correctness before releasing them. She had noticed the sketchbook. She had never asked about it. Some things, Ms. Reyna knew, a teacher must simply hold space for. At the library, she gathered her students in a semicircle near the reference desk. "All right, folks, you have 2 hours. You know your topics, you know the rules. Cell phones on silent. Respect the librarians. And if you don't know how to find something, ask. Librarians are like ninjas. They know where everything is." The class laughed. They scattered. Elijah wandered. He had not, in truth, picked a topic yet. He had told Ms. Reyna he was considering criminal justice reform. He had told his father he was considering economic policy. He had told himself he would figure it out at the library. He walked between the tall aisles. He ran his fingers along the spines of books. He passed the biography section. He passed the history section. He passed a display case featuring a local author's new novel. And then, almost by accident, he passed a small alcove near the community bulletin board. There was a table. On the table, there were binders. Fat, blue, 3-ring binders, each one labeled with a white printed sticker on the spine. Missing Children, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 2015 to 2020. Missing Children, 2020 to 2025. Still missing after 10 years or more. Elijah stopped. He did not know why. Something in his chest, the static, clicked, one small notch toward a signal. He looked around. No one was watching. Ms. Reyna was across the library, helping a student use the microfilm machine. His classmates were scattered. He reached out. He picked up the 3rd binder. Still missing after 10 years or more. He opened it. The first page was a laminated introduction from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. He skimmed it. Statistics. Numbers. He did not really read. He turned the page. Faces. Page after page of faces. Children who had been taken years ago. Some as toddlers. Some as teenagers. Each face was accompanied by a name, a birth date, a date last seen, a location, and, for the older cases, an age progression photograph showing what the child might look like now. Elijah's throat felt strange, dry, tight. He kept turning. Page 12. A little girl from Ohio, missing since 2011. Page 24. A boy from Texas, missing since 2013. Page 38. Twins from Oregon, missing since 2012. Page 45. He almost turned it. Page 46. He almost turned it. Page 47. He stopped. His fingers stopped. His breath stopped. At the top of page 47, there was a photograph of a smiling 5-year-old boy in a red hoodie. Front tooth missing. Chocolate ice cream on his wrist. Elijah Jamal Holloway Price. Date of birth, March 14th, 2010. Date last seen, March 17th, 2015. Last seen, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Height at time of disappearance, 3 feet 8 inches. Distinguishing features. Small crescent-shaped scar under right eyebrow from a fall at age 3. Elijah's hand, moving without his permission, rose to his right eyebrow. He touched the tiny crescent scar he had asked his father about once at age 9. His father had told him he had gotten it playing in the yard. He looked back at the page. Below the childhood photograph, there was a second image. An age progression rendering. 16 years old. His own face. His own exact face. The jaw, the cheekbones, the eyes, the slight fullness of the lower lip, staring back at him from a laminated page in a public library, under a heading that read, "Still Missing." And to the right of that face, to the right of his face, there was a third photograph. The photograph of a woman. Warm brown skin. Wide, dark, watchful eyes. Full lips. A small mole just beneath her left ear. Hair pulled back in a soft, low bun. Mother. Naomi Annette Holloway, 27 at time of disappearance. Actively searching for her son. If you have any information regarding Elijah's whereabouts, please contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children immediately at 1-800-THE-LOST. The room began to tilt. The library, the shelves, the tables, the fluorescent lights, went suddenly quiet, and then suddenly loud, and then suddenly quiet again, as though the volume knob on the world had been broken. Elijah's hand, the hand that had drawn her face 1,000 times, was trembling. Because the woman in the photograph on page 47 was the woman he had been drawing every night for 11 years. She was not a ghost. She was not a dream. She was his mother, and she was alive. "I think," he whispered, to no one, to the empty aisle, to himself. "I think I am the boy on the poster." Somewhere far above him, in the recessed lighting of the library ceiling, a soft, wordless melody with a small rise at the end began to play in his memory. A lullaby he had never been told he knew. And for the first time in 11 years, he understood what home actually sounded like. Elijah did not remember the bus ride back to school. He did not remember getting off the bus. He did not remember walking to his locker. He did not remember Ms. Reyna gently touching his shoulder in the hallway and asking, "Elijah, honey, are you feeling all right?" He remembered saying, "Yes, ma'am. I think I just need some water." He remembered her looking at him for a long moment, a look that lasted a fraction of a second too long. The look of a teacher who had seen many things in many years and was seeing something new in this boy today. Before she said, "All right, but my door is open, any time." He remembered walking outside. He remembered sitting on the concrete steps at the back of the school where no one went during afternoon classes. He remembered opening his backpack. He remembered pulling out a folded piece of paper. Because before he had left the library, before he had put the binder back on the table with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else, he had done one thing. He had, quietly, taken out his phone. He had taken a photograph of page 47. He had done it because he did not, in that moment, trust his own mind. He did not trust that he had seen what he had seen. He needed proof. He needed to be able to look again. But then, before leaving, he had also done a second thing. He had walked to the library's front desk. He had asked the librarian, a kind, gray-haired woman named Ms. Yolanda, if he could print something from the binder. She had blinked. "The missing children binder?" "Yes, ma'am." She had studied him, not suspiciously, but carefully, for a moment. Then she had said, quietly, "All right, son. Which page?" 47. She had taken the binder. She had walked to the copy machine. She had made a copy. She had folded it in half. She had walked back to him and pressed it, gently, into his hand. 25 cents, honey." He had given her a quarter. She had held his eyes for just a moment longer than was strictly necessary, and she had said, "Whoever needs finding, I hope they get found. You take care of yourself." He had nodded. He had walked away. Now, sitting on the concrete steps behind his school, Elijah unfolded that photocopy. There it was, in black and white but unmistakable. Him at 5. Him at 16. Her. He stared at it for a long, long time. And slowly, quietly, a great and terrible order began to assemble itself in his mind. The gravestone with the misspelled name. The absence of photographs. His father's flicker of pain, always in the same beat, always in the same rhythm, always exactly on cue. Karen's careful, sad face whenever he asked about the old days. The way his father had gently, over years, discouraged him from social media. The way his father, once, when Elijah was 11, had come into his room and found him doodling a woman's face on the back of his math homework, and had gone very, very still, and had said, "That's an interesting drawing, son. Who is that?" And Elijah had said, "I don't know, just someone in my head." And his father had smiled, the warm, controlled smile, and said, "You have such a good imagination. Just remember, imagination is a gift, not a life. Focus on real things." And Elijah had never drawn her at the kitchen table again. Only in the sketchbook, hidden under the mattress. He understood now. He understood that he had been trained. He understood that his father was not, as he had always believed, a grieving widower who had done his best to raise a son alone. His father was something else. His father was the person who had taken him. The wave that rose in Elijah's chest was so large he could not name it. It was not anger. It was not yet. It was grief. A strange, backwards grief. The grief of realizing that the mother he had been mourning for 11 years had never actually been dead, and that the 11 years of grief itself had been a theft. He sat on those concrete steps for a long time. The afternoon bell rang. He did not go inside. Kids poured out of the school. He did not move. Karen's car, she always picked him up on Tuesdays, pulled up at the front. He heard her honk. He did not respond. Eventually, she found him at the back. She sat down beside him on the steps, in her scrubs, with her purse in her lap, and she did not ask what was wrong. She just sat. After a long time, she said softly, "You want to go home?" Elijah looked at her. The word home had, an hour ago, meant one thing. Now it meant something else entirely. He folded the paper. He put it in his pocket. He stood up. "Yes, ma'am." In the car, he did not speak. Karen glanced at him twice. She did not push. When they got home, Darnell was not there yet. He never was this early. He would not be home until 6:15. It was 4:07. Elijah had 2 hours. He went upstairs. He shut his bedroom door. He sat on the edge of his bed. And then, very calmly, very deliberately, he began to think. His father was smart. His father was careful. His father was not going to let this go without a fight. If Elijah confronted him now, tonight, alone, with no proof beyond a photocopy from a library binder, what would happen? Darnell would deny it. Or worse, Darnell would produce a new story. A story about how, yes, of course, there had been a difficult custody battle. And yes, of course, some websites still listed Elijah as missing because bureaucracies were slow to update their databases. And yes, of course, Nadine Holloway was technically still alive, but had been not well. She had been unstable. She had been dangerous. And Darnell had done what any good father would do. Darnell would talk. Darnell would talk and talk and talk. And Darnell was very, very good at talking. Elijah needed more than a photocopy. He needed proof. He stood up. He walked out of his bedroom. He walked down the hall to his father's office. The door was locked. It was always locked. But Elijah, who had lived in this house for 11 years, knew where his father kept the spare key. Top drawer of the guest bathroom, under the extra soap. He got the key. He unlocked the door. He walked in. And in his father's bottom desk drawer, behind a false panel he had noticed but never opened as a curious 12-year-old, Elijah found a small gray lockbox. The lockbox was not empty. The lockbox was small, the size of a hardcover book, with a 4-digit combination lock on the front. Elijah stared at it. 4 digits. 10,000 combinations. He could not, obviously, guess them one by one. But he had lived in this house for 11 years. He knew his father's mind. His father was a man of patterns. His father used the same PIN, 0314, for his phone. His father used the same Wi-Fi password, Reliance 314, for the router. His father's favorite date, the anchor of the entire fabricated life, was March 14th. Elijah spun the small tumblers. 0, 3, 1, 4. Click. The lockbox opened. He sat down on his father's leather office chair. He rested the box on his lap. Then, slowly, he began to unpack it. Item 1. A yellowed manila envelope. Inside it, a stack of legal documents. A petition for divorce filed by Naomi Annette Holloway, dated January 8, 2015. A counter-petition filed by Darnell Michael Price, dated January 22, 2015. A temporary custody order dated February 27, 2015. And, beneath those, a set of forms Elijah had never seen. An application for a legal name change submitted in the state of Georgia in June 2015. Denied on the grounds of incomplete documentation. Elijah Jamal Holloway Price. That was the name in the divorce documents. His full legal name. His father had never once told him he had a hyphenated last name. He had grown up as Elijah Price. Item 2. A Ziploc bag containing a woman's silver bracelet. Small, delicate, with a tiny charm shaped like an elephant. He knew, instantly, in a place beneath conscious thought, that this bracelet belonged to her. He held it. It was warm in his palm. His eyes filled. Item 3. A stack of envelopes bound with a rubber band. Elijah slipped the rubber band off. The envelopes were old. Some of them were yellowing. All of them were addressed, in a woman's careful handwriting, to Elijah J. Holloway Price, care of Darnell M. Price, a P.O. box in Atlanta. The return address on every single envelope read, Naomi A. Holloway, an address in West Philadelphia. None of the envelopes had been opened. Elijah counted them. 43 envelopes. 43 letters from his mother over 11 years that had arrived at his father's P.O. box and had been quietly, methodically, intercepted and stored. He picked one up. The postmark was from 2016. He turned it over in his hands. His fingers were shaking so badly he could barely hold it steady. He opened it. My dearest baby, I do not know if you will ever read this letter. I do not know if your father will let you see it. I do not know if the address I have is still the right one. But I am writing anyway. I will write every year, on your birthday, for as long as I am breathing. My love, you turned 6 years old today. I do not know how tall you are now. I do not know what your favorite color is. I do not know if you are still afraid of the vacuum cleaner the way you used to be. But I know one thing, Elijah. I know that I love you. I have loved you every single second of every single day since the moment I first held you. That love is a fact of the universe now. It is a law, like gravity. And no one, no matter how clever, can suspend it. I sing you your lullaby every night before I go to sleep. Even though you cannot hear it, I sing it. Because I need you to know, wherever you are, that Mama is still here. Mama is still singing. I am going to find you, baby. I do not know when, I do not know how, but I am going to find you. I promise. I promise. I promise. Your mother, always, Naomi. Elijah put the letter down. He was weeping. Not the way children weep, not loudly, not messily, but the way men weep. Silent, controlled, old. He picked up another letter, and another, and another. Every year, on his birthday, for 11 years. She had written to him. She had never stopped. And his father, who had spoken to him with warmth over breakfast every morning, who had taught him how to tie a tie, who had taken him to that fake grave every March 14th and put an arm around him. His father had taken these letters, one by one, and hidden them in a lockbox, in a locked office, in a house designed to look like a home. Elijah looked at the last envelope. The postmark was less than 4 months old. He opened it. My dearest baby, you are 16 years old today. I read on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children website that they released a new age progression rendering. I stared at it for hours. You look so much like your father in the jaw, but your eyes are still mine. I would know those eyes anywhere. I want you to know something, in case this is the letter that finally reaches you. I am not the woman he told you I am. I do not know what he told you, but whatever it is not true. I loved you. I love you. I have never stopped looking for you. If somehow you are reading this, please, my baby, please call this number. It is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. 1-800-THE LOST. Tell them your name. Tell them my name. Tell them where you are. They will do the rest. I have kept your room. I have kept Peanut. I have kept the elephant bracelet. No, wait. I gave the bracelet to your father the day I left him, and I have often wondered if he threw it away. Come home, baby. Just come home. Your mother, forever, Naomi. Elijah looked down at his palm. The elephant bracelet, the one his father had not thrown away, the one his father had kept, because Darnell Price kept everything, cataloged everything, controlled everything, sat curled there, silver and small and warm. He put it into his pocket, alongside the folded photocopy from the library. He closed the lockbox. He put it back in the drawer, behind the false panel, exactly as he had found it. He locked the office. He returned the key to the guest bathroom, under the extra soap. He walked back to his own bedroom. He sat on the edge of his bed. He looked at the clock. 5:47 p.m. His father would be home in 28 minutes. Elijah, 16 years old, calm, controlled, trained by 11 years in a house of instruments, picked up his basic phone. He dialed 1-800-THE LOST. A woman answered on the third ring. National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, this is Diane speaking. How can I help you? Elijah opened his mouth. The static in his chest was gone. For the first time in his entire remembered life, the radio was tuned to a clear signal. My name is Elijah Jamal Holloway Price. I was taken from my mother in Philadelphia on March 17, 2015. I am in Atlanta. I am safe. I am at 4127 Cedar Ridge Court, and I would like to speak to my mother. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Just a small one. Just long enough for Diane, a woman who had, in 18 years at that call center, taken thousands of these calls, but only rarely one like this, to steady her voice. Then she said, gently, warmly, professionally, Elijah, honey, you are so brave. I'm going to help you right now. Stay on the line with me. Don't hang up. Elijah closed his eyes. He held the elephant bracelet against his chest. And somewhere, 342 miles away, in a small apartment in West Philadelphia, a phone belonging to Naomi Annette Holloway was about to ring. And 11 years of waiting were about to end. Naomi was at the corkboard when the phone rang. She had just come off a 12-hour shift. She had not yet slept. She was standing in her living room, still in her scrubs, staring at the age progression image of a 16-year-old boy, adjusting a thumbtack that had come slightly loose. Miss Lorraine was in the kitchen making chicken and rice, because Naomi never made anything for herself unless someone else was in the house. The phone, the landline, an old cordless model she refused to give up because it had been the number on the missing person report, rang. Naomi picked it up. "Hello? Ms. Holloway?" The voice was female, calm, professional, careful in the way that certain voices are careful, voices that have delivered a lot of hard news, and sometimes some good news. "Yes, this is she." "Ms. Holloway, my name is Diane Whitfield. I'm calling from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children." Naomi did not move. Miss Lorraine in the kitchen sensed something and turned the burner off. "Ms. Holloway, I need you to sit down." Naomi did not sit down. "Ms. Holloway, we have received a call from a young man who has identified himself as Elijah Jamal Holloway Price. He is 16 years old. He is calling from an address in Georgia. He has provided identifying information, his birth date, your full name, the exact date of his disappearance, the P.O. box address his father used, and a description of a silver charm bracelet with an elephant on it that he says belongs to you." Naomi's knees went first. She sat down on the floor. Miss Lorraine, who had come into the living room, dropped to her knees beside her, not to hold her up, but to hold her steady. Diane's voice continued, gently. "Ms. Holloway, we are, of course, going to verify all of this through proper channels. Local law enforcement in Georgia is already being dispatched. But, Ms. Holloway, based on everything we have been able to confirm in the last 12 minutes, we have every reason to believe that this is your son. And Ms. Holloway, he wants to talk to you. He is on the other line, right now. Are you able to speak?" Naomi could not answer. She was not making sound. Her mouth was open, but no words were coming. Miss Lorraine took the phone from her hand, gently, firmly. "Diane," Miss Lorraine said, her own voice trembling but strong. "This is her neighbor. I have been beside her for 11 years. Please put that boy through. She is here. She is ready. She just needs a second. Put him through." There was a click. There was a soft breath. And then, into the phone, a young man's voice, deeper than Naomi had ever imagined, but with just the smallest tremor in it, said, "Mama?" Naomi took the phone back from Miss Lorraine. The sound she made was not a word. It was not a word because words are not big enough for 11 years. It was a sob, a single, enormous, oceanic sob that came out of her body like something being finally released. "Baby," she whispered when she could speak. "Baby, baby, it's me. It's Mama. It's Mama. I'm here. I'm here. I never left. I never left, baby. I've been here the whole time." On the other end of the line, in a quiet bedroom in an Atlanta suburb, a 16-year-old boy who had spent his entire remembered life believing his mother was dead, put his face in his hands, and, for the first time in 11 years, wept without the fear of being watched. "Mama," he said, over and over. "Mama. Mama. Mama." They did not, in that first phone call, say very much beyond her name and his. They did not need to. There would be time, many, many years of time, for everything else. But in that moment, on that Tuesday evening in October, on a phone line stretched across 342 miles, a mother and a son found each other again. And in the kitchen of a house in a quiet Atlanta suburb, a house that had, for 11 years, run like clockwork on the atmosphere set by one man, the sound of a garage door began to open. Darnell Price was home. He did not know it yet, but his 11-year architecture was already burning to the ground. Elijah heard the garage door. He said, very quietly, into the phone, "Mama, I have to go. Dad is home. But I'll call you back. I promise. I promise. Diane has your number. I'll call you back." "Baby, wait. The police are on their way. Are you safe? Are you safe right now?" "I'm safe, Mama. Don't do anything alone, baby. Just wait for the police. Just wait." "Mama." "Yes, baby. Sing it. Just once. Just so I know for sure." Naomi understood immediately what he meant. She closed her eyes. She sang. It was a soft, wordless melody. Simple, with a little rise at the end. The melody she had made up in a hospital room in 2010. The melody she had sung in the shower, in the car, at bedtime. The melody she had sung every single night, alone, for 11 years, into the empty air of a small apartment in West Philadelphia. Just in case the vibration of it could travel. Elijah, 16 years old, holding a basic phone against his ear in a bedroom he no longer recognized as his, heard the melody. And he closed his eyes, and every single cell in his body said at once, "I know this song. I have always known this song. I was born knowing this song." He whispered, "I have to go. I love you, Mama. I love you more than anything on this earth, Elijah Jamal. Be safe. Be careful." He hung up. He put the elephant bracelet carefully into the pocket of his jeans. He put the photocopy of the missing person poster on the desk. He picked up his father's stack of intercepted letters, which he had brought back to his own room, and he tucked them under his arm. He walked downstairs. Karen was in the kitchen, setting the table. Darnell was hanging his coat in the mudroom, humming a tune under his breath, a small, pleased sound. He had had a good day at work. He was, in his own mind, a good father, a good husband, a good provider, coming home to a good family, in a good house, in a good life. He walked into the kitchen. "Something smells good, Kay," he began. Then he stopped, because his son was standing in the kitchen, in front of the refrigerator, holding a stack of 43 unopened envelopes bound with a rubber band. Darnell's face did not change, not visibly. But something behind his eyes, some tiny, ancient calculator, began to work very quickly. He assessed the situation. Envelopes. His son. His son's face. His son's calm, terrible calm. He chose warmth. "Elijah, what have you got there, son?" Elijah looked at him. For a long moment, he did not speak. Then he placed the envelopes gently on the kitchen counter. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the silver elephant bracelet. He placed it on top of the envelopes. He reached into his other pocket. He pulled out the folded photocopy from the library. He opened it. He placed it, face up, beside the bracelet. The photograph of a 5-year-old boy in a red hoodie, holding an ice cream cone. Next to the photograph of a woman with warm brown skin and a small mole beneath her left ear. Next to the age progression image of a 16-year-old boy, Elijah's exact face, under the heading, "Still missing after 10 years or more." Karen turned from the stove. Karen saw the counter. Karen made a small sound in the back of her throat, a sound of something breaking that had been breaking quietly for a very long time. "Darnell," she whispered, "what is this?" Darnell did not look at her. Darnell looked at his son. He had, over 11 years, run through this scenario in his mind exactly 0 times, because he had never allowed himself to believe it could happen. And now, standing in his own kitchen at 6:19 p.m. on a Tuesday, with the smell of rice cooking on the stove behind him, he understood, in one instant, that every wall he had built for 11 years had just fallen at once. He chose, again, warmth. "Son, let me explain." Elijah tilted his head just slightly. "You told me she was dead." "Elijah, you told me, every year, on March 14th, at a headstone that isn't hers. Son, listen to me. You hid her letters." "Elijah, please, sit down. Let me explain. Your mother was not well. She was not—" "Don't." The word came out of Elijah so quietly and so clearly that Darnell stopped speaking. "Don't you dare," Elijah said, "make this about her." The room was silent. Karen was crying silently, holding a wooden spoon that dripped rice onto the floor. Somewhere outside, far off, the faintest sound of a siren began to grow. Darnell heard it. He knew what it was. He looked at his son one more time. And Darnell Price, the engineer, the vice president, the man who had, for 11 years, calibrated the atmosphere of his home the way a technician calibrates a machine, did something he had never done in his son's memory. He sat down, not in the chair, on the floor. He sat down on the kitchen floor, put his face in his hands, and for the first time in Elijah's life, did not have anything to say. The sirens grew louder. 3 days later, at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday, a small blue Honda pulled up in front of a narrow brick row house in West Philadelphia. Naomi had not slept in 3 days. She had not eaten a full meal. She had been on the phone with the FBI, with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, with her attorney, with Miss Lorraine, with her mother down in Charleston, with everyone. She had spoken to Elijah on video call twice a day. She had, at his request, shown him the room she had kept for him. The twin bed, the blue quilt, the shelf of books arranged the way he had left them at 5, the stuffed elephant named Peanut. She had, at her request, watched him show her his sketchbook. Page after page after page of her own face, drawn by a boy who had never seen a photograph of her. They had both wept a great deal. They had both laughed a little, too. Now, after the paperwork, after the emergency custody transfer, after the courtroom, after the arrest, after the arraignment, after everything, Elijah was here. Actually here. The car door opened. Miss Lorraine, standing on the front steps beside Naomi, whispered, "Baby, baby, look." Naomi could not look. Naomi looked. He stepped out of the car. He was tall, taller than she had prepared herself for, long-limbed, dressed in a plain gray hoodie and jeans. He was holding a duffel bag in one hand and a black hardcover moleskin in the other. He looked up at her. She looked at him. Neither of them moved. For one long, suspended moment, they simply stood there. A woman on the top step, a young man on the sidewalk, and 11 years of space between them. Then, very quietly, Elijah said, "Mama?" And Naomi, at last, moved. She came down the steps. Slowly at first. She was afraid, in some strange way, that he was not real. That if she moved too fast, he would vanish. That any sudden gesture could shatter this glass. And then faster. And then she was running. And then she was there, and he was there, and she was pulling him into her chest. And he was so much taller than she was, so much bigger than the 5-year-old she had last held. And yet, as her arms went around him, and his arms went around her, and her hand went to the back of his head the way it had gone to the back of his head 1,000 times when he was small, he folded into her the exact same way. The body remembers. Even after 11 years, the body remembers where home is. Neither of them spoke for a long time. They just breathed. She breathed him. She breathed the smell of his shampoo, the smell of the long car ride, the faint smell of laundry detergent that was not hers, the smell of the years she had missed. He breathed her. He breathed the faint smell of her cardigan, the smell of the lotion she had worn since before he was born, the smell of the row house, the smell of the country he had been born in and forcibly exiled from. The lullaby played, silently, in the space between them. When at last she pulled back, just far enough to look at his face, she was laughing and crying at the same time, and so was he. "Let me look at you," she said. "Let me look at you. Oh my God, let me look at you." She held his face in both hands. She traced her thumb very gently over the small crescent-shaped scar under his right eyebrow. "You fell off Miss Lorraine's porch chair," she said. "You were 3 years old. You cried for an hour. I promised you ice cream. I bought you a whole quart, and you ate 3 spoonfuls and passed out." He laughed, a shaky, watery laugh. "Dad." He stopped. He corrected himself. "Darnell told me it was from the yard." Naomi's face flickered, just for a fraction of a second, with pain and rage. Then she smoothed it away. "Well," she said gently, "now you know." Miss Lorraine came down the steps. She was not a woman who cried easily. She had, in her 72 years, cried perhaps a dozen times. She was crying now. "Boy," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "Come here. Come here. Give an old woman a hug. I helped raise your mama through 11 years of hell, and I have earned a hug." Elijah hugged her. She held him a long time. She whispered, so quietly only Elijah could hear, "God is good, baby. God is good. God is good." Inside the house, on the second floor, at the end of the hallway, there was a bedroom door that had been open just an inch for 11 years. Naomi walked her son upstairs. She stopped at the door. She looked at him. "Baby," she said, "this room has been waiting for you. I have kept it. I did not touch anything. If you don't like it, we can change everything. But I did not want the day you came home to be the day you walked into a stranger's room. I wanted you to walk into your room." Elijah looked at her. Then, gently, he pushed the door open. The twin bed, the blue quilt, where the wild things are, the snowy day, corduroy, arranged in the exact order a 5-year-old had arranged them. On the pillow, a stuffed elephant named Peanut. Elijah, 16 years old, 6 feet tall, deep-voiced, controlled, walked over to the bed. He picked up Peanut. He held the stuffed elephant against his chest. And he sat down on the bed, and he wept. The whole body, whole life, whole childhood kind of weeping. And Naomi sat down beside him, and she put her arm around him, and she began, softly, to sing. The lullaby. Wordless, simple, with a little rise at the end. He knew every note. He had always known every note. Darnell Price was charged with parental abduction, interstate flight to avoid prosecution, custodial interference, and multiple counts of mail interception related to the 43 intercepted letters. His trial, 1 year later, lasted 11 days. He hired a very expensive attorney. His attorney argued that Darnell had been a loving father, acting under a sincere belief that he was protecting his child. The prosecution, a soft-spoken woman named Ms. Patterson, did not argue with any of that. She simply, one by one, entered evidence. The false gravestone, the fake anniversary receipts, the purchased burial plot, the intercepted letters, the internet filters Darnell had installed on the family computer, the fabricated documents from the original custody case, the testimony of the librarian, Ms. Yolanda, who described a 16-year-old boy asking her, calmly, to make a photocopy of page 47. The testimony of Ms. Reyna, who described noticing, from Elijah's first week in her class, that his handwriting was too neat and his silences were too careful. The testimony of Karen, who, to Darnell's shock, took the stand for the prosecution. Karen, in her quiet, tired voice, told the jury that she had loved Elijah and that she had loved Darnell, but that she could not, as a woman, as a stepmother, as a human being, stand by a man who had stolen a child from a mother for 11 years. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Darnell Price was convicted on all counts. He was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. He did not react when the verdict was read. He simply, as he had done all his life, kept his face very still, managed the muscles around his eyes, and calibrated the atmosphere. But there was no atmosphere left to calibrate. The house he had built was gone. Elijah did not go to the sentencing. Naomi asked him, gently, if he wanted to go. He said, "No, Mama. I don't want him to see my face. He does not get to be a part of any more of my mornings." She held him for a long time. Karen, after the trial, moved to a small apartment on the other side of Atlanta. She wrote Elijah a letter, a real letter, in her own handwriting, on paper that smelled faintly of her lavender lotion. In it, she apologized. She said she wished she had asked more questions. She said she hoped, one day, when he was older, he might allow her to be a small, quiet friend. Elijah wrote her back. He kept the correspondence going, twice a year, on his birthday and on hers. Some hands, he understood now, are also victims of the machine. Some hands hold the wooden spoon, but do not build the wall. Elijah moved back to Philadelphia permanently, 3 weeks after the reunion. He enrolled in a new high school, a public art school, at Ms. Reyna's suggestion, which she made in a phone call to Naomi that lasted 47 minutes and covered the entire arc of Elijah's soul as she had witnessed it. He kept his sketchbook. He filled the rest of that moleskin and started a new one, and started a new one after that. He drew his mother's face many more times, but he also, now, drew other things. He drew Miss Lorraine sitting on the porch, shelling peas. He drew the row house, with its narrow brick front and its lopsided mailbox. He drew the room at the end of the hallway, the twin bed, the blue quilt, the stuffed elephant named Peanut. He drew a woman in scrubs and a gray cardigan standing at a corkboard covered in photographs, and he called that drawing Mama Working. He drew the library. He drew page 47. He drew the librarian, Ms. Yolanda, whose hands had made the photocopy that had changed his life. He drew the phone. He drew the phone many times. Naomi kept working nights at Children's Hospital. She could have quit. The settlement from the civil suit against Darnell was substantial. But she did not want to quit. Those other mothers in that oncology ward still needed someone who understood their grief. She was still that person. Except now, when her shift ended at 7 a.m. and she came home to her narrow row house on her tree-lined street, and she walked upstairs, and she paused, out of 11 years of habit, at the door at the end of the hallway. The door was not open an inch anymore. It was closed. Because behind it, in the twin bed under the blue quilt, her son was asleep. She would open the door very quietly. She would look at him for a long moment. She would smile. And then she would close the door, all the way, and go to her own room to sleep. Because for the first time in 11 years, Naomi Holloway could close a door. Because for the first time in 11 years, she knew, for a fact, in the marrow of her bones, that when she opened it again, he would still be there. Parental abduction is the crime the world does not call a crime until it has already taken everything. It does not look like a stranger in a windowless van. It does not look like a headline about a serial predator. It looks, most of the time, like a father in a pressed white shirt, in a comfortable suburban kitchen, telling his son gently that his mother is not well, that his mother has passed, that his mother has cut off contact, that his mother is complicated, that his mother is anything at all, other than the truth. Every year in this country, an estimated 200,000 children are taken by a parent in violation of a custody arrangement. Not thousands, not tens of thousands, 200,000. Every year. Almost all of them by a parent who, in his or her own head, is not a criminal, but a rescuer. A father protecting his son. A mother protecting her daughter. A parent choosing, unilaterally, to erase the other parent from a child's life, and telling themselves that they are doing it out of love. They are not doing it out of love. They are doing it out of control. Real love does not require the disappearance of another human being. Naomi Holloway spent 11 years, 4,015 mornings, walking past a door that would not fully close. She never gave up. She never stopped looking. She never stopped loving. She never, not for one single day, allowed the world to convince her that her son was not out there. And Elijah Holloway Price, 5 years old when he was taken, 16 years old when he was found, spent 11 years drawing his mother's face from a memory he could not consciously access, because the body remembers what the mind is not permitted to know. Every sketch was a small, silent rebellion against the wall his father had built. Every drawing was a candle lit against the dark. And in the end, the wall came down not because of an FBI raid, or a private investigator, or a psychic, or a bounty hunter, or any of the dramatic tools we imagine when we imagine these stories. The wall came down because of a librarian named Ms. Yolanda, who took 25 cents and made a photocopy of page 47. The wall came down because of a teacher named Ms. Reyna, who held space, quietly, for a boy whose handwriting was too neat. The wall came down because of a neighbor named Miss Lorraine, who knocked on a mother's door every single morning for 11 years and refused to let hope die in that house. The wall came down because a boy, trained, controlled, atmospheric, one day picked up a binder in a public library and turned to a page that statistically he was never supposed to see. The wall came down because a mother refused to stop. And that is the message of this story. That is what I want you to take with you when you close this video and go back to your ordinary Tuesday afternoon. If you are a mother, or a father, or a grandmother, or a neighbor, or a teacher, or a librarian, or a stranger, and you love a child who has been taken from you, or from someone you know, in any way, by any distance, by any lie, do not stop. Do not stop knocking on the door. Do not stop writing the letters. Do not stop lighting the candle. Do not stop singing the lullaby, even into the empty air, because the vibration of that song travels farther than any of us know. One day, on some ordinary Tuesday, in some ordinary library, on some ordinary page, the wall will crack. And the boy or girl you have been waiting for will look up, and they will remember, and they will find their way home. Because love, real love, patient love, refusing love, is the one signal that no wall, no matter how well engineered, has ever been able to block. Nadine Holloway knew that. She was right. If this story moved you, please, take one moment right now to hit subscribe. Every subscriber allows us to tell one more story of a family that refused to give up. Leave a comment and tell us, who is the person in your life who has refused to stop loving you, no matter what? We read every single comment. And until next time, keep the door open. Even if it's only an inch. Even if it's only for 11 years. Someone, somewhere, is finding their way back to you.